William Still by Jimmy Ruffetto. Greetings everyone, my name is Jimmy Ruffetto, and today I will discuss the life and work of William Still. Before we begin, let me affirm that Liberty University believes historians must be objective and honest in their investigation, and I've made every attempt to do so with this biographical project. William Still was a Christian African American who lived a remarkable life during the 19th century. He's best known for his work as a conductor on the Underground Railroad, and for the landmark book he wrote detailing the stories of fugitives and operatives on the Underground Railroad. William Still was an unusually gifted and successful man, who had many accomplishments at a time of great oppression. I will discuss William Still in the context of the 19th century, and in the context of the broader study of American Christian heritage. Still's life is of significance to the historian that is interested in the role that African American Christians played in the enduring struggle for equality for African Americans, not just because he was successful, but because of what he was successful doing. You see, William Still's broad range of achievements and ventures can be seen working towards one goal: to push his race forward on the long journey towards achieving freedom, equality, and dignity. A destination that, despite his remarkable efforts, William Still would never fully reach. Still was born in 1821 in New Jersey, a free man. His parents married and had 4 children together while they were still slaves. His father Levin managed to buy his own freedom, but not his family's. His mother Sidney fled once but was recaptured and had to flee a second time, and had to leave her 2 sons behind. Sidney rejoined Levin with her 2 daughters, changed her name to Charity, and they raised their family on a 40-acre homestead in New Jersey. They had 14 more children together, the youngest of whom was William Still. William witnessed the agony his mother felt for the 2 sons she left behind, and this burden greatly impacted how he felt about the separation of families caused by slavery. Though he had little formal schooling, he educated himself and learned to read and write well, reading extensively. He moved to Philadelphia in his 20s, and in 1847 began working as a janitor and clerk for the Pennsylvania Anti-Slavery Association. Although he had previously helped at least one runaway slave, his role in the Anti-Slavery Association brought him directly into an important and connected stop on one of the busiest lines on the Underground Railroad. It was a line that led from Virginia and Maryland upward to Canada through either Detroit or New York. Philadelphia was key because it was the first step across the border from the slave state of Delaware, and its large population of freed blacks and abolitionist-minded Quakers made it a less dangerous stop for runaway slaves than many of the Underground Railroad stops. Over the next 14 years, William Still would help over 400 fugitive slaves reach safety. Fugitive slaves would come to the Pennsylvania Anti-Slavery Association, and Still would keep track of who came, write down their stories, offer them food, money, and assistance, and help send them on their way to the next stop on the line. He helped as many as 60 slaves in a month. Oftentimes, the fugitives would temporarily stay in his house with his family. Still immersed himself in his work and became a very talented and successful operator. He kept track of wanted ads on runaway slaves. He learned the laws to use them to the slaves' advantage. He forged relationships with other abolitionists and sympathizers, even police officers, to get help wherever possible, and he had a very high rate of success with the fugitives he assisted. In 1850, the passage of the Fugitive Slave Act made it much easier for fugitive slaves to be retrieved by their masters, even in non-slave states. Runaways were no longer safe after they crossed into the North. It made William Still's job that much more difficult, and now he would need to help slaves reach Canada. Early in his tenure at the association, William Still had the opportunity to meet a former slave named Peter. Peter had been separated from his parents at a young age. He was sold south from Maryland to Alabama as retribution for his mother's escape from slavery. He had managed to eventually buy his own freedom and was now trying to both locate his parents and his siblings and to secure freedom for his own wife and children who were still in bondage in Alabama. As William heard Peter's story, he realized that Peter was actually one of his mother's 2 lost sons. This man was his own brother. The incident galvanized William's desire to help families reunite, and he picked up his efforts to detail the accounts of fugitives in order to help people locate their separated family members. His accounts would be very successful, especially in the years after the war. As for Peter Still, a white man named Seth Conklin volunteered to travel south to Alabama to attempt to rescue Peter's wife and children. William compared Seth to the Good Samaritan for his sacrificial deed, risking his life to help others. It was indeed incredibly risky, especially because of the distance. Most runaways escape from the northernmost states, not the deep south. Seth Conklin embarked on his month-long journey, found Peter's family, helped them escape, and slowly led them north, often by boat, sending letters to William Still along the way. They very nearly made it to Canada, but were caught in Indiana. Peter's family was returned to their master in Alabama, and Seth Conklin was first jailed and then found dead, drowned in the river with a fractured skull. Still was involved in many interesting, daring, courageous, and even inventive schemes to free African Americans, including the shipment of Henry Box Brown in a crate from Virginia to William Still in Philadelphia. He was also involved in the daring rescue of Jane Johnson and many others that I just unfortunately don't have time to discuss today. The advent of the Civil War eventually ended the need for the Underground Railroad, and during the first year of the war, William Still resigned his post. He turned to the retail coal business to support his family. He also worked supplying a commissary for the Union Army in Camp William Penn, where many African American troops were trained. Around this time, Still's focus changed from helping slaves find freedom to helping freedmen build new lives, and to help his race earn equality and dignity, especially in Philadelphia, the city he continued to call home. Philadelphia had more African Americans than any city in the North in 1860, leading to a growing anti-black sentiment in the city. It was also one of the most segregated cities in the North. In 1859, Still wrote an article in a local newspaper appealing to let African Americans ride the city's streetcars because they were not allowed. He created a committee to end the discrimination, co-wrote a petition, and secured signature from many prominent white citizens before presenting it to the city. But the city continued for years to refuse to desegregate. Still continued the fight, and finally in 1867, due in large part to Still's leadership, Still eventually won. His wits, persistence, and charisma helped to end the city's segregation on the streetcars. It was an important win for the over 20,000 blacks in the city, both for transportation and equality purposes. In his fight for civil rights, William Still believed that African Americans would need to impress whites in order to earn more liberties. He believed that the majority of white Americans would only give them respect and equality when they were able to display hard work, intelligence, writing abilities, business successes, and other competencies. Of course, he believed that they should have them, but he knew it would be a long, hard road, and that they would have to work for everything that they would receive. He also believed in a God who loved all people, and had even sent his only son to love them and give his life for them. These twin beliefs had a great influence on many of the things he accomplished over the rest of his life. In 1872, he published The Underground Railroad, a book comprised of all the information that he had, at great risk, compiled and edited through his time as a conductor on the railroad. It is a rich primary source, including stories of hundreds of individuals, both slaves and abolitionists, and it also included many of the letters written to him by slaves, former slaves, and other abolitionists. This book is what William Still is most known for, and his writings of so many first-hand accounts is very valuable to the historian. While Still praises the white abolitionists, his hero is clearly the runaway slave. This differed from most other works on the Underground Railroad, which were written by white men and emphasized the heroism of the white abolitionist. For reasons of racial bias and/or historiography, William Still's work has often been neglected by those who focused on the works of white men and championed by those who focused on the accomplishments of black men. The reason he gave for writing the book is that it would be a testimony of the great courage, will to fight, and achievement of the slave. One of the arguments for slavery had been the belief that African Americans were better off being slaves than being free, because of their race's supposed limitations and because they were happy being slaves. Through the writing of this book, William Still wanted to disprove those sentiments. In the same spirit of lifting up his race and perceptions of them, he accomplished a lot in his city before his death in 1902. Unfortunately, I don't have time to discuss them all, but they include starting the Berean Presbyterian Church, starting a bank and loan associated with that church in order to help freedmen find homes and businesses. He started a black YMCA. He worked in efforts to teach skills to freedmen and to educate freedmen. He helped start the Gloucester Presbyterian Mission. He worked pragmatically with politicians to advance causes for the African American, including getting the first black men hired in the city's police department. He helped start a school. And he helped encourage the successes of blacks in many endeavors, including professional writers. His own daughter would become a doctor in the city. While doing all of this, he grew his retail coal business into a highly successful venture, and it is believed that he was worth between $750,000 and $1 million when he died in 1902. Conservative estimates of what that would be worth today put his fortune at over $16 million in 2017. When putting all of these accomplishments in context with what I've already discussed, his work on the Underground Railroad, the book he wrote about it, his work for the Union Army, and his campaign to end streetcar segregation in the city, it shows that not only did he have a remarkably successful life for a black man in the 19th century with hardly any formal education, but it also shows that most of what he achieved in his life was intended to live out his belief in God by helping advance an oppressed race. In his book, he used the following words to describe the work of abolitionists, but I think they sum up the beliefs that guided his life fairly well. He stated, "Here truly is pure philanthropy, that vital Christianity, that true and undefiled religion before God and the Father, which is to visit the fatherless and widow in their affliction, and to undo the heavy burden, and let the oppressed go free." Thank you.